Life often presents unforeseen circumstances. I own a narrative that I have not disclosed to many, as it is intricate. Have you ever experienced the sensation of traversing a precarious boundary between right and wrong, not out of desire but due to life's circumstances? That was my sentiment on that particular day, as if the universe possessed a perverse sense of humor and I was the subject of its jest. It all commenced on an unremarkable Saturday afternoon. I was engaged in nothing extraordinary. During a leisurely weekend, I engaged in some household chores, accompanied only by the soft hum of the dryer. While sorting through my closet to determine items for donation, I discovered an old miniskirt. Although I no longer wear such garments, I believed I had outgrown that phase. However, as I held the skirt, memories surged forth. It was a vestige of my youth, a time when confidence was innate and life revolved around enjoyment and liberation. On a whim, I decided to try it on and slipped into it. I had low expectations, but when gazing into the mirror, I couldn't suppress a giggle at how the garment clung to me more snugly than I recalled, accentuating both undesirable and perhaps desirable areas. I was only experimenting to check whether it fit when I heard a tap at the door. Who could it be? I muttered to myself. My hair was disheveled. I was not attired to make an impression, nor was I anticipating anyone's arrival when I answered the door. There stood my nephew. Jason was no longer a child. He had matured. At 22, he was entirely robust. With broad shoulders and an air of confidence, he was the type of individual who could enter a room and captivate attention. He had a bag of tools, displaying the casual smile he consistently wore. "Auntie, you called regarding the leaky faucet?" I recalled that I had completely forgotten to ask him to come by and repair the sink in the guest bathroom. Although I felt somewhat ashamed about my attire, I chose not to emphasize it and instead laughed it off. "Indeed, please enter. The bathroom is located down the hall." He walked past me, and I observed him momentarily hesitate, his gaze flickering toward me before swiftly averting. Perhaps it was merely my imagination, yet there was an unusual atmosphere. Jason commenced his work on the sink while I returned to my closet, but throughout, I sensed an odd tension, neither negative nor anticipated. Are you familiar with the sensation when someone's gaze lingers excessively, despite their attempts at subtlety? I initially dismissed it as just overthinking, considering he is my nephew. However, as I passed the bathroom to retrieve something from the kitchen, Jason abruptly blurted out, "Hey, Auntie, may you please come here briefly? I believe I require assistance." The subsequent events exacerbated my confusion. Upon entering the bathroom, I found Jason crouched with his sleeves rolled up, exposing his robust, tanned arms. He held a wrench in one hand and gestured towards the faucet with the other. "I believe the pipe is stuck," he stated, glancing up at me. "Can you hold this while I attempt to loosen it?" Nodding, I leaned in to grasp the faucet. The bathroom was diminutive, and before I realized it, we were nearly shoulder to shoulder. I endeavored to disregard the closeness, yet I could sense the warmth of his arm grazing mine as he worked. I glanced at him, and that was when I noticed it. Jason. He was not solely fixated on the pipe. His gaze frequently shifted toward me, as if he were attempting to discern something. It was subtle, not apparent to anybody else, but I perceived it. "Everything was satisfactory?" I inquired, disrupting the stillness. He gazed at me and, for a little while, exhibited reluctance before smiling. His customary relaxed smile accompanied my anxious laughter as I attempted to alleviate the tension. "Well, you are the expert, correct?" There was no pressure. Yet, I could not overlook the manner in which his gaze lingered for an excessive moment. After a few minutes, he ultimately released the pipe and rose, dusting his hands on his trousers. "All done. It should be as good as new," he said. "Thank you," I replied. In an attempt to appear nonchalant, he remarked, "You're a lifesaver," while leaning against the counter, regarding me with an inscrutable expression. "You know, Auntie, I don't believe I've ever seen you in attire like that before." I momentarily froze, my cheeks reddening. "Oh, this," I responded with an awkward laugh, pulling at the hem of the miniskirt. It's merely something I discovered in the back. Regarding the items in my closet that I intended to give, Jason first remained silent. He continued to gaze at me, his eyes betraying an unreadable emotion. Then he smiled, except this time it felt distinct, almost as if he understood. "It suits you," he said, his tone gentler than usual. I was at a loss for words and stammered, "Thanks, I suppose." Experiencing self-consciousness, I promptly turned to go. The bathroom hoping to put some distance between us, but as I stepped out, Jason followed his footsteps close behind Auntie. He said, stopping me in the hallway. I turned to face him, my heart pounding. Yeah, he hesitated like he was searching for the right words. "You ever feel like something's happened for a reason?" "What do you mean?" I asked, genuinely confused. He opened his mouth to say something, then shook his head, laughing it off. "Never mind. Forget I said anything." But I couldn't forget the way he looked at me. The tone in his voice stayed with me. Long after he left that night I was curled up on the couch, mindlessly flipping through channels, trying to shake off the awkwardness from earlier. I kept telling myself it was nothing, that I was overthinking the whole thing. After all, Jason was family. But just as I started to feel normal again, my phone buzzed on the coffee table. I leaned over, picking it up, and there it was, a message from Jason. "Hey Auntie, can I ask you something?" I stared at the screen, debating whether to reply, with something about the timing that felt strange. Why is he messaging me now? After a while, I replied, "Of course, what's on your mind?" His response arrived almost instantaneously. "I keep reflecting on today and you." It appeared distinct. It astonished me, I suppose. My stomach had a little flutter. What was he attempting to convey? My fingers paused over the computer as I contemplated my response. Ultimately, I opted for a neutral reply. "I was merely trying on some old clothes." He received my message immediately. I observed the small typing indicator appear, although it took him a moment to respond. When his message eventually arrived, it surprised me. "You seemed very well. I am sincere in my statement." I stared at the screen in disbelief. My pulse raced. Was this really a benign remark, or was there a deeper implication? I was uncertain how to feel, much less how to answer. After what seemed like an eternity, I texted back, "Thanks, Jason. Your compliment is appreciated." I wished it would conclude the matter, although I instinctively saw it would not. He said once again, "I am uncertain whether to express this, but I experienced a sensation today." "Did you?" My breath felt constricted in my throat. I was venturing into perilous ground, and I was uncertain how to navigate it. Jason was not merely an acquaintance. He was my nephew. Whatever emotions he believed he was experiencing were misguided. However, rather than dismissing him outright, I found myself hesitating. Perhaps out of curiosity or a desire to avoid causing him distress. Consequently, I did not respond immediately, and the typing bubble reappeared. I retracted my previous statement to avoid awkwardness, exhaling shakily, feeling both relieved and disconcerted. I reassured myself it was all a misunderstanding, believing he would move on and that normalcy would be restored. As I set my phone down, I sensed that this was merely the commencement of events. The following morning, while I was initiating my day with a cup of coffee, still disheveled, I heard a knock at the door that made my heart race. I was not anticipating any visitors. Upon opening the door, I found Jason standing there. With his hands in his pockets, he appeared as nonchalant as ever. Nonetheless, there was a notable change in his mood, as his customary carefree smile was absent, supplanted by a serious face that I did not recognize. I acknowledged Jason, attempting to conceal my astonishment. "What are you doing here so early?" He entered without waiting for an invitation. "I was in the vicinity and thought I would visit." It was a tenuous reason. Jason did not reside anywhere near my area, but I refrained from confronting him. Instead of addressing it, I closed the door and followed him into the living room. He sat on the couch, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees. The air was thick with unsaid tension. "Is everything all right?" I inquired while taking a seat. He gazed up at me, his eyes probing mine, and regarding last night, "I did not intend to cause you discomfort." I exhaled a slight breath of relief, pleased that he was acknowledging the matter. "It is acceptable, Jason. Let us disregard the matter entirely." Nevertheless, He shook his head, asserting that he could not just forget. Pertained to Auntie. I meant what I stated. I became immobilized, uncertain of how to reply. This is not how family members should communicate. Jason and I started with caution, stating, I believe you are mistaken. Your emotions are illusory. It is just a reality, he interjected, his tone resolute yet non-confrontational. I acknowledge it is erroneous, and I have been endeavoring to resist. I attempted to dismiss it, yet my thoughts remained consumed. My pulse raced, and I experienced a blend of emotions. Astonishment, perplexity, and a hint of shame. How did we arrive at this point? Jason, I implored, my voice quavering, you must cease this. You are my nephew, and this is inappropriate. He nodded slowly, his eyes cast downward. I understand. I understand it is wrong, but I felt compelled to express my emotions, as suppressing them was tormenting me. For a moment, the room was enveloped in silence, save for the faint ticking of the clock on the wall. I was at a loss for words, uncertain how to rectify this situation, or if it was even salvageable. Ultimately, I rose, needing to create distance between us. Jason, I believe you should depart. We both require time to contemplate this. He gazed at me, his face a blend of remorse and yearning. Very well, he whispered softly. But this is not the final discussion we will have on this matter. He departed without further comment, and as the door shut behind him, I had a surge of relief accompanied by a persistent anxiety as the evening sun cast elongated shadows over the living room. I noticed the edge of an envelope protruding from beneath the front door, and my chest constricted as I approached, fully aware of its sender before I even retrieved it. I opened the paper with shaky hands, my heart racing in my ears. The handwriting was obviously Jason's, neat and methodical, as if each word had been meticulously selected. The message stated, Auntie, I know you requested my departure, and I respect that, but I cannot feign that these feelings do not exist. I am not requesting anything. I only need you to understand that if you wish for me to distance myself, I would comply without hesitation. Conversely, if there exists even a modicum of reciprocal sentiment, kindly inform me, as I will be awaiting your response. I rose, there, gazing at the words, uncertain whether to feel anger, flattery, or fear. A multitude of ideas raced through my mind. Is he serious? Is it possible for him to? I felt this way, yet part of me hesitated to discard it entirely. I folded the paper and concealed it in a drawer, out of sight but not out of mind. I convinced myself that I would not react and that ignoring him was the optimal course of action. But deep inside, I saw that this was not concluded. Later that night, as I attempted to sleep, my phone vibrated once again. Jason was the individual. Jason, I understand I previously stated I would not disturb you, but I want confirmation of whether you received my message. I gazed at the message, contemplating a response. Ultimately, I replied, yes, I received it, but Jason, this must cease. His answer was quite instantaneous. It is detrimental to both of us. I will cease if you desire. Please inform me candidly. Harbor any feeling for me, even a little. My fingers poised over the keyboard. Admitting anything would exacerbate the situation, and denying it felt disingenuous. Consequently, I responded, Jason, you're my nephew. That's all I can say. It was not the response he desired, but it was the only one I could provide. The following morning, I arrived at work, eager to divert my attention from recent events. My job served as my sanctuary, a realm where I could concentrate on tasks and leave personal issues behind. However, as I sat at my desk sorting through emails, I experienced an unsettling sensation, as if someone were observing me. I looked up and froze. Jason stood just outside the office window, his hands buried deep in his pockets, appearing both conflicted and resolute. What was he doing? I murmured under my breath, feeling my chest constrict. I promptly excused myself and stepped outside before he could enter and exacerbate the situation. Jason, what are you doing here? I inquired, attempting to maintain a composed tone. I needed to see you, he said, With a quiet yet earnest tone, "You did not respond to my inquiry last night, Jason. I have previously conveyed that this situation is unhealthy. We cannot continue this dialogue, yet you did not refute it," he remarked, approaching closer. "You did not mention you." I felt nothing as I stepped back, my hands clutching the strap of my bag. "This isn't about emotions, Jason. It's about morality. Whatever you perceive this to be, it is incorrect." He sighed, raking his hand through his hair. "I recognize its wrongness. I've reminded myself countless times, yet I cannot govern my feelings." His words lingered, dense and disquieting. I was at a loss for a response, so I began to depart. "Auntie, wait!" he called out. He grasped my arm softly yet firmly, causing me to freeze as I glanced down at his hand before meeting his gaze. There was an unrefined vulnerability in his face that made it difficult to just walk away. "I am not attempting to ruin your life or complicate matters for you," he stated. "I want clarification on the possibility. If none exists, I shall withdraw." His declaration, "You'll never have to see me again," struck me with the force of a physical blow. The prospect of his severing all connections caused my heart to throb. Yet I saw that perpetuating this situation would only result in further anguish for both Jason and myself. Said I, my voice quivering, "Your family. This is all that it can ever be," he affirmed with a nod. Gradually, his shoulders drooped as he stepped back, saying, "All right, I comprehend. I will refrain from interfering while I observe." As he walked away, I experienced an unusual blend of relief and sorrow, believing that it marked the conclusion and that we could finally progress. However, later that evening, I received a call that disrupted everything. Jason had been involved in an accident. Upon my arrival at the hospital, his words to me altered everything. The call had come late. In the evening, as I was preparing to retire for the night, my phone vibrated persistently on the coffee table when I observed Jason's name illuminate on the screen. My stomach sank, but it was not Jason on the line. It was a woman's voice from Mercy General, stating, "Your nephew has been in an accident. He is requesting your presence." Panic surged within me, and without inquiring further, I seized my keys and hurried out the door. Upon arriving at the hospital, my heart raced. I entered the ER through the swinging doors, surveying the room until I spotted him. Jason lay on a bed, a minor laceration on his forehead and his arm in a sling. He looked up as I approached, his face pale yet his eyes retaining their familiar intensity. "What happened?" I inquired, my voice tinged with concern. He offered a faint smile. "It is really a little collision, Jason," I said with irritation. "You caused me much concern." He chuckled gently, then grimaced. Clutching his side, he said, "I apologize. I was uncertain whom else to contact." I exhaled audibly. Positioning a chair near his bed, I stated, "I am present now. Are you well?" "Indeed?" He nodded, his demeanor softening. "Yes, but there is something I must convey to you, Jason." "Now is not the time," he said, his voice calm despite the vulnerability in his eyes. "I did not contact you just due to the accident. I reached out because I came to a realization. I was perplexed, uncertain of the direction this was taking." "What are you?" While discussing the matter, he gazed at his hands, his fingers nervously manipulating the edge of the hospital blanket. As I contemplated the possibility of not surviving, my thoughts were consumed by my deep affection and the realization of my numerous mistakes, along with my desire to avoid losing you, Jason. I started to express this, but he raised a hand to interrupt. "To prevent my interruption, allow me to express this," he implored. "I acknowledge that I have transgressed boundaries, and I loathe myself for it, but this is not a mere fleeting sentiment for me. I have deeper affection for you than I have for anyone else, and I see its impropriety, yet I am unable to resist it." His words lingered in the atmosphere, weighty and unrefined. I was at a loss for words. A part of me wished to console him, assuring him that everything would be fine, yet another part recognized that this was not a matter I could remedy with mere kind words. Before I could articulate my thoughts, a nurse entered the room, dispelling the tension. "Visiting hours are over," she stated with a courteous yet assertive smile. I rose, feeling both relieved and inundated. Get some rest, Jason. We will discuss this later. He nodded, maintaining eye contact as I exited and drove home. I often revisited his statements in my thoughts. I believed I had made the correct decision by departing, although upon my return, I encountered an unsettling presence at the home that prompted me to reevaluate everything as I approached. The house exuded an unnerving silence as I navigated the driveway. I entered, removed my shoes, and observed an unfamiliar small package on the kitchen table, inscribed with my name in Jason's handwriting. I hesitated before opening it, my hands trembling slightly. Inside, I found a letter and a small photo album. The letter commenced with, "Auntie, I know you requested that I cease communication, but I must elucidate everything, even if this is our final conversation. Please read this and peruse the album. Thereafter, if you desire my absence from your life, I will honor your wishes." I fully unfolded the letter, my eyes scanning the text. From the moment I returned here, I sensed a change in our dynamic. Initially, I could not comprehend it. I initially perceived it as just adoration or respect. Nevertheless, it gradually became evident that it transcended those sentiments. I see how this may be interpreted, and I have endeavored to resist it. However, I am unable to do so. Transform my emotions. You have consistently supported me more than anybody else. You have witnessed my lowest moments and still show concern, which I do not take for granted. I hesitated, my pulse racing. The gravity of his words was nearly overwhelming, yet I continued reading. I put together this album to remind myself of everything I love about you, not in a way that crosses lines but as a way to process my feelings. You'll find photos of us from family gatherings, moments where you were laughing or just being yourself. I'm sharing this with you because I don't want to keep secrets anymore. I'll respect whatever decision you make. But I couldn't let this go unsaid. I set the letter down and opened the album. The photos were familiar family barbecues, holiday dinners, and random snapshots I didn't even remember being taken. Each one was accompanied by a small note in Jason's handwriting pointing out details. He appreciated how happy I looked, at how kind I was to others, and how much he admired my strength. Tears welled up in my eyes. It was overwhelmingly touching and deeply unsettling. I closed the album and sat there for a long time trying to process everything. Jason wasn't just expressing infatuation. He was laying bare his heart in a way that felt impossible to ignore. But what could I do? I refrained from discouraging him, not only because it was morally objectionable but also because it would jeopardize our family. But completely excluding him seemed as harsh, considering the evident distress he was experiencing. Before I could determine my course of action, my phone buzzed again. Jason sent a message inquiring if I had received the package. He requested confirmation of its receipt and indicated that if I wished for him to leave, I should simply say so, and he would depart by tomorrow. I contemplated Jason's message for what seemed like an eternity, my emotions clashing with my rationality in an uncontrollable struggle. He had placed the decision squarely in my hands, a choice that could irrevocably affect both our lives and our family. I responded, instructing Jason to visit the following day for a discussion. The next morning, he arrived punctually, exhibiting both anxiety and optimism. I welcomed him inside, and we took seats together. Situated opposite one another in the living room, the atmosphere was laden with unexpressed sentiments. "Jason," I commenced, my tone resolute yet tender, "I have perused the letter and examined the album. I recognize the considerable thought and effort you invested, and I cannot deny its emotional impact on me. However, we must establish certain boundaries for both our well-being." He acknowledged my words with a nod, though his demeanor remained cautious. "I comprehend. I only required you to be informed. That is all I am aware of regarding my emotions," I stated. Leaning forward, "I must convey that I love you as family. That is the extent of my feelings. Your emotions towards me stem from appreciation and thankfulness, which is okay, but we must not conflate those sentiments. For an alternative, it would ultimately be detrimental to both of us." He gazed at his hands, his expression a blend of relief and melancholy. "I comprehend," he stated softly. "I do not wish to lose you.